Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. It's time for my May wrap up and I know it's quite late. We're a good 4 or 5 days into June, so I'm sorry for being late, but it is what it is, okay? So talking about the books I read this month, or last month actually, in May, I read 7 books and I DNF'd 1. So kind of like 8 books, right? Before we start talking about the books, I would just like to tell you guys something. Last month I read 13 books because I had pretty much nothing to do all day for more than half the month. And then this month I got really busy with my job and everything. And I was also in a reading slump at the beginning of the month, so that was not very good, but I still think that I got a good amount of books finished in this month. So yeah, let's start. The first book I read was Red, White and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. I finally picked up this book and I read it. It has been on my bookshelf for so long and I'm so glad I read it because I really enjoyed it. This book follows Alex and Henry. So Alex, he is the son of the president of USA, and Henry, he is the prince of United Kingdoms, right? And they're sort of like rivals, they don't like each other, but some stuff happens and they have to sort of pretend to be best friends for the sake of their national relationships and stuff like that, and they end up falling for each other, and it's just so cute. The quotes in this book were amazing. I was underlining like crazy, and the politics aspect was very interesting. I did not expect it to be so emotional. Like the last 1/3 of the book, it got pretty emotional, and I really enjoyed it. It was an all-rounder book. It was funny, it was cute, it was interesting, it was emotional. It was just an all-rounder, and I'm so excited about the movie that's going to come out. So yeah, I gave it I think 4.5 stars. The reason why I cut that 0.5 stars is because this is written in third person, and I think it's the first book I read which was written in third person. It took me a while to get used to it. So yeah, that was Red, White and Royal Blue. Next I picked up Things We Never Got Over by Lucy Score. This is the first book in the Nockma series by Lucy Score, and it follows Daisy. No, he calls her Daisy, that's not her name. This follows Naomi and Knox. Naomi has a evil twin sister sort of who lives in Knockmouth and has a daughter named Waylon, but she is not a very good person. She steals and stuff like that. Everybody hates her, including Knox. And then one day Naomi gets a call from her twin sister and says that she sort of needs help. So Naomi comes to Knockmouth and she realizes that her sister has just gone away, left the daughter, and she has to live there now. She has to take care of the daughter because you can't just leave your niece motherless, right? So she stays, and that's where she meets Knox. So Knox, originally he hates her because he thinks she's going to be just like her sister, but it turns out she's not like her sister. And then he realizes that she's a very nice person, he's a very sunshine kind of person, but he's a very grumpy person and he does not really want to be with a sunshine person. And then a lot of stuff later happens. It's a very thick book as well. What I thought about this book was I loved the small town vibes, I loved the romance aspect as well, but I think that the characters were a bit too immature, especially the two main characters, Knox and Naomi. They were grumpy sunshine and he was a bit too grumpy and she was a bit too sunshine, where it was like, you're 40 years old, you're not supposed to be this grumpy and this mean and rude to everyone, and you as well, you're not like a 12-year-old kid. You're not supposed to just let people say that stuff about you or let that person treat you like that. Just no. So that's why I sort of got detached from the book, because I did not relate with the characters. I hated Knox. I'm sorry, I know people love this book, they love Knox, I don't know, but I just did not like Knox. I hated him, and because of that I think I gave this book much less stars. I think I gave it 3.5 stars or something, I'm not sure. I don't even remember because I did not think about this book anymore. It was a miss. It was a miss. I was expecting it to be a hit for me, but it was not. It was a miss for sure. I just feel like this is this kind of book that you will not know whether it's for you unless you read it. It was not for me. I did not enjoy it. End of story. Next up, I picked up Addicted to You by Krista and Becca Ritchie. This is again the first book in the Addicted / Calloway Sisters series, and I DNF'd this book. I read 124 pages and I just DNF'd it because at this point I was already in my reading slump. I wanted to read something positive, something nice, but this book, if you don't know, is about addiction. Both the main characters, Lo and Lily, they are both addicted to different things, and they're sort of come into an arrangement where they're deceiving their family members and their friends, saying that they're not indulging in their addictions by being together, but they're in fact just indulging in them completely. And I mean, I get that aspect, but the relationship that Lo and Lily had, I just did not like it at all. I hated Lo with all my heart. I just hated him. I hate the relation he had with Lily. I hate the way, you know, he made Lily feel. And the only reason why I stopped reading this book is because of Lo. I just did not want that in my life. Maybe I can pick this up sometime else and read it, but just right now, when I was reading this book, I was in a reading slump. I wanted something positive. It was not for me at that time. So I DNF'd this book. Sorry to all you guys who love the book with all your heart. I'm really sorry, but I just could not read this book. And I might give it a shot some other time, but not now. So I read a bunch of romance, and the last 2 romances I did not like, so I had to switch up my genre. And I don't know if you guys know, because I've pretty much read only romance books on my channel till now, but I'm actually a fantasy reader. I started reading because of fantasy. I was a heavy fantasy reader, so I felt like I'm in reading slump. I'm not enjoying my romances anymore. I have to go back to my fantasy genre, and so I picked up The Serpent and the Wings of the Night by Carissa Broadbent, and I loved it. I loved it so much. This book is basically Vampire Diaries plus Hunger Games. I know it's a very bad description because there's a lot more that happens in this, but I just feel like that's all you guys should know if you haven't read this yet. Just go into it blind, only knowing that it's about vampires and it's like a Hunger Games situation, and you will enjoy it for sure because I enjoy it, and that's all I knew about it. Also, the names of the characters are so good. Her name is Oriah, which is very good, and the guy's name is Rain. That's so cool. Also, finally, I read a book in which I did not hate the male characters. In fact, I loved Rain in this so much. After reading about Nox and Lo, I was like, I don't think I'm ever gonna like a book boyfriend, a book male character ever. But then I read about Rain and I was like, oh my god, it's back. It was just so good. It was just perfect. Oriah and Rain together were just perfect. Rain was just perfect. Oriah was just perfect. They were like your typical strong-willed fantasy characters, and I just love that because it gives me hope, and it just gives me positive vibes when I read about strong characters, and that's what I loved about this book. The fantasy aspect was amazing. It was very easy to understand. Literally the first 20 pages you were getting like an introduction to the world, and then boom, we were right into the plot, which was not what I was expecting, because fantasy books, usually the first book in a series, they end up being, you know, at least 100 pages about just introduction, but that was not the case with this book. Just 20 pages of introduction, and then boom, we're into the plot, and it was amazing plot, by the way. So yeah, I love this book. I think I give it a 5 stars. And if I didn't give it 5 stars, I'm pretty sure I gave it a 4.75 stars because it was very, very good. And I'm dying to read the next book in the series. I'm just not able to find the book. But the minute I get it, I'm going to be reading it. That's for sure. Because I still wanted to be in this universe, I ended up picking up 6 Scorched Roses by Carissa Broadbent. This is the novella that comes right after Serpent and the Wings of the Night and before the Ashes and the whatever, right? This follows 2 completely different characters. Remember the names? Okay, I don't remember the names at all because there's no blurb over here. But the main characters and a human and a vampire, and the vampires associated to the vampires in this book, right? And we were getting sort of their story before they also end up coming into the continent in which the Serpent and the Wings of the Night thing is happening. And I loved this book so much. The romance in this was much heavier than the Serpent and the Wings of the Night, and it was just so good. I was not expecting to love a romance, like a fantasy romance, just 100 pages, but I loved it so much. I was more involved and more connected to these 2 characters in just 100 pages with fantasy than I was with Nox and Naomi in 500 pages. Honestly, this book was so good. I loved it, and after reading this book I was even more excited to read the next book, which is about them, and I think all of these characters together, and I'm just really excited to read that. 5 stars to this novella as well. 5 fucking stars. Loved it. If you guys want to read any fantasy, if you want to start reading fantasy, or if you don't already, you already do enjoy fantasy, or whatever, you just want to read a fantasy book, I think this is a very good place to start because it's very easy to understand. It has a lot of romance in it as well, so that it's not just fantasy for you guys, right? And yeah, it was just amazing. Next up, I read The Way I Used to Be by Amber Smith. This book is very, very sad. It's very, very heavy. Please watch the trigger warnings before you read this book. I should have. This book is basically about Eden. It follows Eden, who has been through a very traumatic experience at a very young age, and she's not been able to tell anyone about it. The book follows her throughout her years of high school and how she copes up with the situation, or she doesn't cope with the situation, how it affects her as her personality, how it affects her as a person, and how later she finally realizes the only person who can help her and who can sort of, help her get through life without feeling completely broken is only herself and no one else. And yeah, I really like this book. It's a very heavy book. Obviously it sits on your heart. It's that heavy, but I feel like it's the kind of book that everybody should read. Obviously if you're comfortable after reading the trigger warnings, but sure, I think it's a story that everyone should learn about. That's all I think about this book, and that's all I'm gonna say about this book. Also, I was seeing this everywhere on Instagram, on Reels, so I had to pick this up and read it, and I did. And I'm not gonna say I enjoyed it because there's nothing to enjoy in this book, but it was a good book. I gave this a 5 stars. I loved it, and it was a very important book, I feel like. So yeah, then next I wanted to have a nice cute little read because this book was very, very heavy, so I picked up Love in Outer Worlds by Christina Lauren. I don't have much to say about this book because I read half of it and then I started realizing I'm not really in the mood for romance right now. I kind of want a sci-fi fantasy book, but I still had read half of the book, and it was not like I was not enjoying this book, so I didn't feel like DNFing it either, and I ended up reading the entire book. But I honestly don't remember much about this. It's, I think, Best Friends to Lovers, Second Chance Romance. It was definitely good. I'm not gonna say it wasn't good. It was very, very good. I really liked the relationship that the two characters had, Elliot and Macy. I honestly don't have much to say about this book, guys. It's a very popular book. You guys must have read it already. I would definitely recommend it, but that's all I'm gonna say about this because that's all I remember about this. I'm sorry. And it's not this book's fault. It's the book I read after this. That book's fault, because that book just blew my mind away. That's the reason why I don't remember anything about this book. So it's not this book's fault, right? So I'm putting this down. Sorry. And the last book, the book that completely ruined me for any other book, is The Three Body Problem by Cixin Liu. This is again the first book in the Remembrance of Earth's Past something series. This is a sci-fi book. It's about alien invasions and stuff. And I loved this book so much. I mean, it's about aliens, it's about physics, it's about science, it's about science discoveries and physics. That's all I can tell you. Set in China after the Cultural Revolution which happened, and how they made contact with an extraterrestrial whatever society, whatever, from a different universe. And then we also see the POV of the people in that extraterrestrial planet, on that extraterrestrial planet, and it was just so interesting. There were parts in this book where I was just like, oh my god, can they do this? Does this happen? Wow. It was just, I loved this book so much. I've been on a book hangover because of this book. I am not able to read anything else after this book, and I hate it for that, but I also love it. It's gonna be a Netflix series, and I'm gonna binge that series just like I binged this book. I really want to read the second and third book as well. I bought this book and I really wanted to read it. Like, I really wanted to read it, But at that time I was reading Love in Other Words, and because of that I do not even remember Love in Other Words, because I was so excited and engrossed in the idea of reading this book. I don't think I read a book for like 2-3 days after I read this. That's a lie. I didn't read a book for a day. Only one day. Read this book, please. If you like science fiction, or if you don't like science fiction, it doesn't matter. Read this book, please. It's amazing. Okay guys, so I think that's it. These are all the books that I read in May and my Kindle. I DNF one book, but that's okay. I feel like I will come back to it some other time and maybe I'll enjoy it then. But yeah, that's it for today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you guys liked any of the books. If you guys have read any of these books, please let me know in the comments. And if you haven't, I hope I sort of, you know, influenced you into reading them, especially this one. So yeah, thank you so much for watching guys. I'll see you next time. Bye bye.